This week's episode is in partnership with Intact Insurance, here for you and for everything you care about. Hello and welcome to the Jann Arden podcast and show. We are a show and a podcast. I'm Jann Arden, and I'm coming to you today from Toronto, Ontario.
Are you sure?
Yes, I am sure. I am jet lagged. I'm going to tell you, when I was younger, jet lag was not, it really wasn't a thing. I feel like I could just hit the ground running. I could get out of the plane wherever I was. And even going to London last week, it took me like 2 days. I felt like kind of unwell. And I slept a little bit on the plane. I have an Oura ring, Oura, and I love it. It's a sleep tracker, a fitness tracker, heart rate. It does a lot of stuff. They keep upgrading this ring. And I love mine. I've bought them for gifts for people. I think they're about $340.
I got to look into this.
Yeah. But anyway, it gives me a sleep number all the time. It tells me when I should go to bed. You know, your optimum bedtime is between 8:30 and 9:30 or something. Anyway, when I checked my sleep score, I was curious when I landed in London. It was like 54. So my ring was really confused as to what I was doing, you know, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then, of course, it's linked to my phone. So it realized, okay, she's in a different time zone. But yeah, I felt wonky for a couple of days. And now on the other side of this, I find coming back this way is easier. So I got into Toronto at 10 after 7. I left London at 3 p.m. I don't even know how to do the friggin' math. But I stayed awake on the plane. I watched some movies, drank some tea, read my book, and had a really hard time getting to sleep when I got here. And I finally feel a little bit better today.
Yeah. Planes are also so hard to sleep into because, like, you find your body in such a crunched position, right? And your posture.
Well, they don't really make those seats very ergonomic. And, you know, you're close to people. I mean, I've done my share of back of the plane flights in my life. I'm not going to lie. I probably haven't flown economy for a number of years. And, you know, I'm 60 years old, and I'm not going to apologize for flying business class. I use a lot of points because I fly so much. I use a ton of upgrade tickets. So I'm always wheeling and dealing,
Love
you know,
it.
and getting deals. But if you can, it is worth it on an overseas flight to save your air miles, save those points, you know, pay that base fare and then upgrade. And a lot of times, make sure I sound like the points guy. Sorry, points guy. Sorry, Brian. You know, a lot of times when you're checking in, and if they haven't filled that business class cabin, you can check, you know, is it possible to upgrade? And sometimes they even offer you an upgrade for really cheap. So keep your eye out for that kind of stuff. And you should follow the points guy on Instagram. Brian Kelly, I think, is his name. Chris, is his name Brian Kelly?
Yeah, the points guy.
Points guy.
Yeah.
My road manager, Chris Brunton, is here behind me. But the points guy on Instagram, and he can give you so many cool ideas for traveling. And that goes from car rentals to, you know, where to go, hotel rooms, tours. Brian really is hooked up. He's done an amazing job of developing that brand over the years. Brian Kelly just had a baby. He's got a brand new baby. And that's pretty cool. So now he's traveling with his baby and making it look like the easiest freaking thing in the world.
Okay. Lots to learn. I just followed him. I'm going to check him out.
What was the question? Nobody asked me a question. I just started going off.
We were like, where are you?
Well, we're all in Toronto, and it's really unfortunate that we couldn't meet up at the studio to record in person. I actually saw Sarah yesterday, everybody.
In real life?
Mm-hmm.
You're beautiful in real life too, by the way.
You are very beautiful in real life. You've glowing skin. You look like you just like came from a jaunt through a meadow in Sweden. And your cheeks were glowing and your long blonde hair. Anyway, we were talking about the podcast and talking about, you know, things to do with the podcast and how we want to grow this podcast and do some cool things with it. So Adam, you would have been happy that we saw your old stomping ground.
The last time that we recorded in that building was
Yeah.
February of 2020.
Crazy.
Ah,
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
So wild.
it really is.
Seeing people in real life, like, it's wild to me, Jan, how many conversations we've had about all sorts of stuff. And like seeing you in person, you know, in real life yesterday, I was like, oh my God, it feels really different.
It feels different. It's very tactile, but there was certainly a very familial thing. You know, when I saw you, I'm like, oh, there she is. And I don't know. You're exactly the way you are. You know, I think you guys represent yourselves.
Authentically, I would hope.
Yeah, very authentically, and you're very vulnerable. And you know, like you said, Sarah, we've had lots of really great conversations. I think we've all learned, you know, since the pandemic, how to be on Zoom calls and Riverside calls and whatever the hell else is going out there,
Yeah.
FaceTime and Facebook, and you know, I think we did adjust. I think there was a lot of awkward moments when people first were at the cameras. They were looking at themselves so much. I never even look at myself anymore. It's just like, okay, look really terrible, and we'll just get past that, and here we go. But I think we dropped all that stuff. I think people first started getting themselves ready in the morning, and you know, putting on a nice shirt and getting all ready, and then as it wore on, because we all thought this would be over in 3-4 weeks, we did.
Right.
We did it.
We thought it would blow over like the plague in the Bible, and that we would come out of our houses after a month and the sun would be shining and it would be over. But we did learn how to be on TV. Let's just say we learned how to be on TV.
Mm-hmm. I want to come back around to that for a second, but I feel like we need to fill Adam in on your I'm gonna say welcomed interruption on a live to tape e-talk set yesterday.
What did I miss?
She just waltzed right in and sat down on the chair like she was part of the broadcast, and the broadcast team was taping, and they were like, "Oh, hello, Jann Arden is here."
I didn't know they were taping. So we were in the Bell building, and E-Talk and, you know, Tyron and Tracy Melchor were sitting there doing their piece, but I didn't know they were filming. So I just plunked myself down on the couch.
And the best part to the podcast listeners is we have a little video of this, which I will post this weekend. So look for that on the Jann Arden podcast page if you like a good laugh.
Amazing.
Yeah, well, needless to say, they had to cut and start again. And the floor director did not look happy with me. She was just like, we got shit to do here, Jan.
Who let her in here? So good.
Who let her in? Anyway, yeah, we're all in Toronto, and this is not going to air until Saturday, of course, but right now it is Thursday afternoon, and I don't know what you guys are seeing, but I'm seeing nothing. There's a thick blanket of fog
Oh yeah.
over this city, and my visibility is probably, I'm going to say 200 yards.
That's it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now I can't see the lake, and I'm right beside the lake, right? Like on the west end of town. I cannot see the lake right now. It's just white.
So what is going on here? Is that anything to do with the water? Like, I'm no meteorologist, but you know, this would have been really great for the kids at Halloween. How spooky would this have weather been for that?
Well, it was here all week, so don't worry. They had it.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I think it's the drastic temperature changes because yesterday it was 20 degrees and then it was 5 degrees this morning.
And it's going back to 18 tomorrow. So there's like a bunch of different things, but it says it's all about the temperature swings. But yeah, they're giving fog advisory warnings for like drivers. It's like on the big signs on the Gardner, on the highway. It's all over.
I just want to do a little plug here. I am not sponsored by these people, but this afternoon, Chris and I went to Odd Burger on College Street in Toronto. Odd Burger is a vegan fast food restaurant. They are popping up all over the place. There's one coming in Calgary that I'm so excited about. For all you people in Calgary, it's going to be, I think, 17th Avenue and 14th Street, a really cool area. But here it's on College, just off of Bathurst. And Chris had chicken fingers and onion rings. I ordered just their bacon and cheeseburger. This is all vegan, so I'm just fries and a mac and cheese that we got to our sound guy. because he had flown in from a show to do the show that I'm doing today here. I have a corporate job. But we ordered so much food. We ordered the Oreo kind of blizzardy type things. Am I allowed to say that without infringing on somebody's
You're fine.
rights or
You're fine.
or trademarks? But I'm telling you, if you have a chance to go to Odd Burger, it's all, you just go onto your big screen and punch in, and it's all, you can just tap your credit card. Super easy to order, excellent people. I really believe in, making a difference in the footprint that we are leaving with how we eat on this planet. And we're going to talk more about that when we come back. I think, listen, if you get a chance to talk to be able to talk on behalf of animal welfare, people are so scared to step out into that light, and I don't want them to be. I don't mind talking about veganism. It really is something that people, they kind of turn the other cheek to sometimes. People seem to get PO'd about every little thing these days when you talk about not eating animals. But I'm telling you, any kind of cruelty towards a living thing is indefensible. And that I will say, it's indefensible. We have to figure out a better way to treat the things that we are using for food. And I really hope that in my lifetime, if I live another 20 years, that we really see the amount of animals that we are eating diminishing a lot. This is not sustainable, what they do to farmed animals. But back to my point of Odd Burger, completely 100% vegan. And it's not even about cruelty. It's about that, but it's about the planet. It's about everything. I just love them, and I'm here to bang their drum and to cheer for them. You're listening to the Jann Arden podcast. I'm here with Sarah Burke, Adam Karsh. I should have mentioned that right off the top of the show, but we're here. We've got a great show for you. We're going to be talking about teachers. We're going to be talking about Dragon's Den. We're going to be talking about anxiety and mental health, all of that when we come back right after this.
Yep, it's getting colder out there. What you need is a sell-off vacation. I know what you're thinking, but did you know? You can book now and pay later.
What?
Like that family getaway to Tulum. Or maybe a beach vacation just for two. Oh, romantic. Pack that suitcase and dive straight into paradise with
SellOffVacations.com.
Monthly payment applicants are subject to approval by Uplift Canada. See website for details.
Welcome back to the Jann Arden podcast. I'm here with Sarah Burke and Adam Karsh. We're on a foggy, foggy, foggy day in Toronto. I don't want to hear any complaining from you people here in Ontario because you've had an amazing fall, as we did in Calgary. But yeah, winter's coming, and this is like a harbinger of. It looks like a harbinger, very foreboding day out there. Like literally walking around, I felt like I was in London looking for the Jack the Ripper to jump out from the alleyway.
That's fair. It's hard to see around here. That's for sure. Even when I was driving to come see you at the iHeart building, Jan, I couldn't see more than like 3 cars in front of me.
Well, what's happened in Calgary is that everyone put off getting their winter tires, unless they're driving on, I guess, all-season radials, which a lot of people are doing these days. So summer, winter, it's the same damn thing, which I do, because I can't be bothered. I mean, what do you mean you got to change your tires? Why? But I guess there was such an onslaught of people waiting to get. They were just literally spinning out on the slightest of inclines. But there's a foot of snow there now. I keep checking my cameras at my house and kind of looking out, and I'm like, oh my God.
I want snow.
Well, I like the snow. I like a good reason to have a fire and sit in the house and read books and feel like I can slow down. Although that doesn't really happen. I'm touring again January and February, so I'm really looking forward to having a little bit of time over the holidays. I think my last job is December the 18th. When do you guys kind of pack it in to go into that? Can't even believe we're talking about Christmas, but
freelance, it's kind of no packing, to be honest. So
it just goes and goes, doesn't it?
It just goes and goes. But yeah, there's lots of I end up usually around the holidays filling in for a lot of announcers at the other radio station. So yeah, there's usually some extra shifts to pick up and that kind of thing. And the Hanukkah is literally how I got my start in radio, to be honest. Because they were like, listen, you're Jewish. If you're not celebrating Christmas, you want to do your first shift? And I was like, yep.
Adam's pointing at his chest. I guess so. So for all the people that are celebrating Christmas and want to be at home on the 24th, 25th, they're like, hey, Adam and Sarah are Jews. Let's have them come in
The Jew crew.
and play Christmas music for the people.
And I did. I worked overnight into when I was at the station, starting out in my early days of shift work. I worked Christmas morning every day. Happy to. My pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, back in those days, were you guys at all like spinning records or doing CDs? Was it all programmed in when you started? Was it just the computer button, or were you actually loading discs and spinning songs?
Mostly computers. It was mostly automated, but there was still a bunch of analog components. I mean, I wasn't playing records or anything, but yeah, there were some things off CD or carts. It looked like 8 tracks. Remember those?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, it was pretty automated. But even when I started in radio, we were feeding tape, like on a reel-to-reel machine, cutting tape. I was doing that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I may go to the next generation of digital with this comment, but yeah, everything's pre-programmed. Most people don't know that, like, radio announcers don't usually pick their own music unless they're doing a specialty show. So luckily over the years, over holidays, like, I would pick a holiday theme and then throw my Adam Sandler in there, and if there's like a special.
Yeah, there was a time where DJs really made their mark in the world by having a block of time, be it 3, 4, 5 hours, where they played their music. And so people might remember Wolfman Jack.
Yeah.
Like, there's people that had these great handles, and they were very well known for the type of music that they played. They were very well known for breaking songs. They would literally get a 45 in their hands and spin it and play it. And they made up their own playlists. And now most stations that we're hearing, folks, even where you're listening to me right now on whatever radio station you've got tuned into, these stations are all pre-programmed. So if you hear a block of music, there's a whole bunch of stations that are playing exactly that same block of music. So it's kind of a drag, but if you're an artist that can get a spot on radio, which is very difficult to do when you think about 2,500 singles being released in a week, and most stations have 2 or 3, maybe 4 spots available to spin these songs if you're lucky. But if you get on there and you're being played once every 90 minutes, you are really on your way to having some success.
I got to ask you, tell me about your first time hearing yourself on the radio.
Well, it was a song called Will You Remember Me, and off of my first record. And I was driving in my crappy old car in Calgary, and it came on, and I just pulled my car over.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. I don't know if I was going to get out and stop traffic or like wave my arms, but I pulled my car over and I just sat. I think I was on Glenmore Trail, of all places. It wasn't quite as busy 30 years ago as it is now. And I just had one of those very surreal moments that, okay, here we go.
It's so awesome.
Yeah, it was. I'll never forget that. And now, if I hear myself on the radio, I usually will, listen a little bit. I'm always happy to hear it. I hear myself a lot in Vegas. I hear myself, in the weirdest spots. I had a friend of mine she was in somewhere in China, and she's videotaping this weird wall in this restaurant. And she's like, I know the wall's uninteresting, but just listen. And it was Insensitive.
Really?
Oh my God.
And they were somewhere in Shanghai, and Insensitive was
Cool.
on the Muzak in this restaurant. So it's pretty cool. Music, it travels a long way.
Yep.
It's borderless. It's like a white flag waving in the air.
So
It's
cool.
been a magical part of my life, but thank you for asking. Sarah, you brought a story in, to talk about this week, and I think it's really interesting. Tell me about Dan Mangan and his partner and what they're doing. They have an appearance coming up. I believe it's the 4th of November on Dragon's Den.
Yeah.
And it's about music. And if you've ever wanted to hear an artist playing in your living room, which who wouldn't want that? So talk to us a little bit about what you know.
Yeah, I was interested to get your opinion on this because it's just like a little less traditional than what we've grown accustomed to. But here, I'll read you from the Side Door website.
Okay.
They're a dedicated team of artists and technologists committed to building a more efficient, fair, and decentralized global ecosystem for the performing arts. We believe anybody should be able to perform, curate, and present shows for their communities. And so the idea is Dan Mangan, Juno award-winning artist, and his partner, Laura Simpson. Their company is called Side Door, and it basically brings hosts and performers into like a community platform. Some of the biggest bands in Canada, played. Okay, for example, Broken Social Scene, big indie band here in Canada. They played like a weird little farm off the 401 between gigs through this Side Door platform. And the idea is more of those fees that you see, like, the big Ticketmaster grabs going to the artist. And the idea to have a show in a really unconventional space, whether it be like a farm, someone's cool basement, living room, everything on the platform, they do all the checks and, making sure that everyone's safe and everything, all those things like
Well, security and making sure that there's safety things involved and that the stage is built properly and all that.
all that stuff. But it gives you like a totally different experience too, like if you're in the audience, right? Like imagine would you ever perform in someone's living room if you knew that security and all those things were checked by the company?
Well, I have done it to a certain degree. I've done a lot of different corporate jobs over the last 30 years. We did a wedding thing a couple of times. This guy, I played on his 40th, I played on his 50th, and I played on his 60th, like, so obviously over a 20-year span. And I think it was one time was in his house or his friend's house. And we had the whole band in there with speakers, and there was just everyone kind of poured out the living room and the kitchen. But they paid my rate, and we had a little set of lights, like a tiny little set of
Yeah.
lights. But I've done a couple of weddings privately where we were out on a lawn on Muskoka somewhere on a stage, like a stage built up, but just in front of a couple hundred people that were at this wedding, and did a 45-minute set.
Yeah.
So it's a neat opportunity, and I think if people are able to kind of circumvent those big ticket fees, 5% goes to this and 10% goes to that guy. I think for young artists, or even artists that have been doing it for 45 years, if they can go and make a couple $1,000 in a night and everybody's happy,
Yeah.
we all need to make a living. It can't always be about big stadium shows, and
Yeah.
bigger is not necessarily better.
What's been really cool too, because I've worked really closely with a lot of emerging musicians over the last few years as they've been building up this company, including Dan Mangan, who's one of the founders. The idea of like having new material and feeling really like insecure about it. Maybe you want to like test some stuff out before you go to town, or between gigs, if you haven't had rehearsal time, let's say your band lives all over and then finally you're in the same province and you're on the road together, but you haven't had a practice yet. Well, before the stadium gig, maybe you go make a little money while having a practice that's a hell of a lot of fun in a less traditional space. And the idea there is that any space can be a venue. So by the time you're listening to us having this conversation, you can probably go look it up on Dragon's Den, because at the time of recording, the episode airs tonight. So yeah, you can go see if they got a deal or not.
Yeah, I went online just to look up the clip that they had, but I wish them luck. Dan, you guys, I'll be cheering for you, and I'll definitely be checking back to see what happens. But yeah, it's a great idea, and I think it's an idea whose time has come. You're listening to the Jann Arden podcast. I'm here with Sarah Burke and Adam Karsh. We will be right back.
Yep, it's getting colder out there. What you need is a sell-off vacation. I know what you're thinking, but did you know? You can book now and pay later.
What?
Like that family getaway to Tulum. Or maybe a beach vacation just for two. Oh, romantic. Pack that suitcase and dive straight into paradise with SellOffVacations.com. Monthly payment applicants are subject to approval by Uplift Canada. See website for details.
Welcome back. Jann Arden here. Sarah Burke, Adam Karsh. We're going to just swap, as we do on the show. We just swap out topics. I really do want, before we go, I want to talk a little bit about the teachers. But before we get to that, and this is a really great sort of caveat into speaking about teachers, is mental health.
Oh, yeah.
And Selena Gomez is doing something really cool. She's got a new single coming out, and it has to deal with a documentary that she has done. And I'm sure it took an incredible amount of bravery and work and mental fortitude to put yourself out there to millions and millions and millions of people in a way that might not always be so bright and shiny and Hollywoody and celebrity perfection. It's a warts and all, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
But how important do you think it is, Sarah, for young people to, especially young people with a reach like that, to talk about mental health and how it can go sideways?
I think it's really brave. Like, we've seen a lot of even cancellations of tours in regards
Yeah.
to mental health, where, someone like Shawn Mendes or
Bieber?
or Bieber, right?
Yeah.
Bieber, there's also some other health things, but to be brave enough to say, hey, my body is telling me no right now, so I got to make this call for myself.
Yeah.
That's what I love about this Selena Gomez story. Like, people post one photo of her and like Justin Bieber's wife, and like the rumors and the comment section just swirls out of control, right? So her documentary, by the way, if you're looking for that, it's called Selena Gomez, My Mind and Me, same title as the single. Premieres on Apple TV this week, so you can probably find it by the time you're listening to this conversation.
Yeah.
But she's putting mental health front and center because, life in the spotlight is a little crazy. And I wanted to ask you this on this story. How easy has it been for you to talk about mental health in your music?
I've been really lucky in my life. I haven't had a lot of mental health issues. I've certainly had anxiety in my life, where there was a period of time I found it very difficult to kind of get out on stage. I got really nervous. I had trouble catching my breath, and I didn't know why, but you don't always get to the heart of anxiety or why or what. But as far as, making my way through the world, I do not have a disposition for depression. I don't have a disposition. I'm eternally optimistic. I've always been very lucky to have, a very supportive family when my folks were alive. And it's not that I have been without obstacles. I had heart stuff from the time I was a kid. My brother was in jail for 30 years. My dad was an alcoholic. Like, I've certainly, navigated lots of stuff in my life, but it is my disposition, my mind's chemical makeup to somehow cope. I've not struggled in that realm at all. And I have very little to do with fame. I've been doing this professionally for 40 years, and I have no interest in it. I've been a known person longer than I have been an unknown person in my life. And I just don't cater to it. It has nothing to do with my life. I don't really even know many famous people.
I think the way you express yourself, almost, it's almost the idea, and with Selena in this song too, it's like mental health fitness, right? Like, just the way that you need to maybe incorporate like physical fitness into your life. If you keep your mind, mentally fit, then
I like mentally fitness. I want a t-shirt.
but you know what I mean? Like, the way that you express yourself, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's, through lyrics of a song, I think that being so open and honest is the way that you are mentally fit.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm not the greatest person for asking for help. I don't know if you guys are good with asking for help. When my mom got Alzheimer's and my parents were getting older, and I was sort of the last man standing to look after them, plus they lived 100 yards from me, I did have to tap into my friends, and it was so hard for me to say, can you help me look after my mom, or can you stay with them? Can you help them get lunch? So the first time in my life, I'm like 50 some odd years old, and I'd never really had in hand gone to my friends, my colleagues, and said, can you help me do this? I was able to take my mom on a cruise just before shit really hit the fan with her memory loss. But Chris, who's behind me here, Brenton, who he and I have worked together for 18 and a half years, I could never have done that cruise without him helping me with my mom. And I'm like, that's probably the last thing that he wants to do. But Chris and I still laugh about that fucking trip of my mom drinking beer and the things she said, and she could outwalk everybody on that. She was walking up hills in Switzerland, going to castles and blowing past people who were so hungover from the night before on these boats. But anyway, it's asking for help, and being able to accept help. That's been a big part of my mental fitness. But yeah, it's hard. I think it's very hard for young people to kind of somehow maneuver their way through the barrage of information coming at them. And I know this sounds like an old person saying this, but we did not have the internet.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with that. My mom kicked us out the back door, and I was, busy shooting a gun and driving skidoos, and we didn't have that. Do you remember that, Adam? You would remember this. The frickin' when video games first came out, it was that little round dial hitting a ping pong ball back and forth.
Yes.
And we were amazed by it.
I remember.
That the paddle would move up and hit the little electronic ping pong ball.
Right?
Yeah.
Pong.
Yeah, Pong. We thought that was the end of the world. What is happening? This is the coolest thing. And then after, of course, half an hour, you're like, this is the most boring, mundane thing that ever happened to the world. So, yeah, it's accelerated so quickly. Now, things that are 6 months old are antiquated.
I know.
Talk about this business. But that just speaks to why, when a Selena Gomez stands up and puts something out with mental health at the center of it, all those little girls, all those little boys watching someone that they idolize be open to share about how things are not always easy. That's a good resource to have if we're talking about the entertainment industry. There's got to be some of that.
Oh, absolutely. And it doesn't matter how old you are, you're always susceptible to get to that point in your job, in your relationship, with your physical health. You do have a breaking point, and I think to be able to recognize that and to be able to tell people around you, and I think workplaces are getting much more ear to the ground with someone coming up to their boss and saying, I need a week off. I don't feel well, and I'm crying at my desk. And now there's no question. They're just take the week. I think there's a lot of good things that have come out of COVID, a lot of hideous things. But as far as COVID, people's mental health was put to task this last 2 years. And we'll see what unravels. I think there's a lot to be learned here in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years of exactly what this did to people. Some people fared better than others, but some of us weren't on the front lines, battling this thing day in, day out. Healthcare workers, the police, the teachers aides, the people really trying to keep the wheels on the bus drivers.
No kidding. And I remember before the pandemic going through a breakup with a different fellow that I was dating at the time. And I was beside myself because I knew I had to break up with this person. And I went to work the next morning after we yelled and cried all night. My eyes are puffy, right? But now there's that option, and it's a little more normal to say, listen, I'm going to log in from home today. That option came out of COVID. And back in the day, it was like, nope, just got to get up and go to work.
Hopefully that is going to be the norm going forward, that you don't have to sit on your hands. People like Selena Gomez are making all the difference in the world. Even Shawn Mendes saying, I'm just sorry, guys, I can't go around the world right now. I have to look after myself and my well-being. And a lot of people used to martyr themselves and just go do it and be out there and be miserable and get themselves into so much trouble because they felt like they were letting everybody down. So at least that's come out of this. You're listening to the Jann Arden podcast. I'm here with Sarah Burke, Adam Karsh. We'll be right back. This is going by really fast today. Jann Arden podcast. I'm Jan. I'm here with Sarah and Adam. The whole teachers thing going on in Ontario, and we certainly are not here to give you any updates. We will let you get that from your credible news people because those things are changing all the time. And by the time this airs, it could be a whole different story. But what it did prompt us to think about, and Sarah sent me this note this morning, was favorite teachers, memorable teachers. It's come a long way since I went to school. My God, it was like half a century ago. But uh, I have teachers that will be kicking around inside of my heart till the day I die. And one in particular, her name was Judy Snyder. And then she got married and was Judy Humphreys. And it's so funny. Or was she Judy Humphreys and then got married and was Judy Snyder? So please forgive me, Judy. Uh, I don't know where you started, but you were a fantastical teacher. And she was my music teacher back when they had music in schools. Like I was taught music. And she passed away a few years ago. And it was very sad. She had ALS. But I had a chance to go visit with her and her husband. There's the magic of the internet. I'll say a lot of crappy things about the internet, but because of the magic of the internet, they were able to leave a number at my office and say, Jann may or may not remember me, blah, blah, blah. But I was able to go and have tea and just a walk down memory lane with Judy before she passed away. And it just meant the world to me. But holy smokes, she'd bring records in. First time I ever heard Anne Murray was Judy Snyder brought, her little record player with the detachable speakers. And we all sat there in this classroom and listened to Anne singing. I had a lot of teachers that some of them were not the greatest teachers in the world, but there was something about their personalities. I mean, I don't think I learned one single thing in math class. His name was Mr. Milton, and he putted into a cup like the whole afternoon we were in class. This would have been 1974, maybe 75. But I'll never forget him, Mr. Milton. I mean, in math class, he let us do a play. Well, do a play if you want. That's all right. Just has to include something to do with math. And my friend Teresa, who I still am dear friends with to this day, she goes, do you remember doing that play in Mr. Milton's math class? And I'm like, what the hell? But it's such a great memory. And thank God I managed to scrape through high school. So yeah, teachers. And I know, if you go online, there's so much vitriol, but 90% of people are cheering for educators helpers, for the custodians, for people that help in the library, for volunteers, for chaperones that go on these trips. It is they always say it takes a village, and it does indeed, to get kids interested in learning and to make them feel, and this certainly is part of mental health, making them feel seen and heard and accepted and part of the group. And I always felt like part of the group with the teachers that I had. I can name so many of them. And I don't know, I just feel very fortunate. And I was not a good student. Every single report card is Jann talks too much, if Jann concentrated, if Jann did her homework, if Jann wasn't so busy daydreaming, she could really make something of herself.
You know what's the best? Same thing for me, same thing in my report cards. Exactly. And the best was when the high school teachers start coming around to ask you to come speak to their class about your career. And you're like, oh, what was that? But the reason is like, I remember this one teacher I will never forget, Mr. Stewart. History class, grade 11. I definitely didn't put that on my priority list. I was busy being a social teenager and skipping school and doing my things. Anyway, I would hand in a paper, doing the bare minimum. He'd hand it back to me and go, yeah, you'd get like a B on that, but go do it again because it's going to be better. He just wouldn't accept anything. He knew I could do better every time. And teachers like that are the reason that I'm such a perfectionist in my work today.
See?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Adam, do you have a teacher that you can remember?
Oh, I remember all of them, but specifically, I think one of my, because I had a lot of favorite teachers, but Mrs. Richardson in grade 3, I loved her. She was so nice.
I wonder where she is.
Beverly Richardson. I think I had a crush on her too.
Where are you, Beverly Richardson?
She was so nice. Cliffwood Public School.
And what did she teach you? What was nice about her?
I just liked her way. She was very kind and friendly, and she was a good teacher, and she was just nice. Like, it was grade 3, so whatever we were learning in grade 3, I just remember.
But that's what I mean when you think that kids, oh, they're not going to remember this or it's not important. So it's not even there's getting educated and there's certainly learning skills, writing, reading, you know, whatever, learning things. But then there is that aspect to it, Adam, where there's kindness. You look at kindness in other people and you learn kindness. You're like, that's how you treat people. When a person makes you feel good, there's value in that. And that's all about learning too. I think when kids are going to school, every time I ever went through a breakup in my life, Sarah, getting back to your breakup, the famous 2019 breakup, is that why don't they teach us this stuff in school? Why don't they teach us how to cope? Why don't they teach us, why don't they teach us how to fight in relationships without ending it, without there being ultimatums? Well, why don't you leave then? Why don't I leave? Why don't they teach us practical things? My God, people get up in arms when you get taught any kind of sexuality. You need to be taught that so you can protect yourself and make good decisions, but we're not taught, like, maybe there should be a class where you're taught how to do frickin' laundry. Like maybe parents aren't doing all that stuff now. I remember in home ec, the teacher in home ec, I mean, she was an absolute riot, but she's just like, I should be teaching you how to do laundry and how to darn your socks and how to make yourself a meal because you're going to get out of school and you're not going to know how to do any of that. And I don't know if parents are teaching kids that anymore. And I just looked at her like, I don't know. I had to do all those things. My mom, I had to cook meals when I was like 12 years old. My mom and dad both worked, and they were terrible meals. My dad said, how many cans did you open up to make this thing? And he wasn't wrong. I'd put everything into the crock pot with like a package of meat wrapped up from the freezer downstairs.
Okay.
But yeah, teachers are just, I just don't even know if I would have gone into music. I mean, there was a series of things that happened, but Judy Snyder, just like, I was able to say that to her. Thank you for instilling in me a real love of music and for introducing me to, such cool records.
I want to mention, like, the peripheries of teachers too, the education assistants,
Yes.
all that stuff. I've been thinking about this a lot this week with like this looming strike conversation. So when I was, end of high school, just working summer jobs, I met at day camp where I was a counselor, an autistic girl, and I ended up working one-on-one with her throughout the school year just to make some cash. And she was wonderful, but like nonverbal. So it was a really interesting thing for a high school girl to learn about. And, a kid like that going to school without the right things in place, like that's what I'm thinking about this week, right? And on top of that, with all these, it's 8,000 education workers in the union. They're risking, like, I think I read $4,000 fines. Hold on, where is this? Yeah, fines of up to $4,000 per day to stand up for these things. And it's for the kids. It's like, yes, they're making crappy wages, but it's for the kids that they're doing this.
Nobody goes into that kind of a career thinking they're going to be millionaires. Let me tell you that right out of the gate. And there's a lot of really vile comments on social media about how much money people should be making. I'm like, why don't you shut up? For one thing, there's very few facts, once again, of what people are making. This guy, they all make 120 grand a year. I'm like, I just blocked this guy because he was vile. He was so vile. But I'm just like, do you know what first year teachers out of university make, or second year or third year? These are people that have been teaching for 25 years.
Right.
It's like flight attendants at Air Canada. They don't get the good routes. They don't make the big bucks. You put your time in like anything else. It's like me playing in the bars. It's like anybody in anybody's career. You do not come out of the gate, maybe unless you're a doctor. I mean, there's so many doctors and nurses, but even those people in this country, everybody leaves here. And you're starting to scratch your head and go, why are they leaving? Well, they're not paid the way they should be paid. And I will I'll die on that hill, because I did mention something about, having fond memories of teachers online again last week, and all hell broke loose. Just like,
Oh
oh man,
God.
and I don't know if it's since Elon took over Twitter that people are testing the limits of what their comments can be, like how far out can they go before they're reeled in, because I don't think anybody's being admonished. I don't think anybody's being taken down. You really have to get in there and block. Just block, 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 block. Don't waste your time, don't waste your breath. That I've learned in the last couple of weeks. I think I've blocked something like 2,500 people in the last month.
Wow.
Not kidding you.
Labor intensive blocking right there.
No, I don't mind it. But anyway, yeah, I think we all have fond memories of people. And Adam, I'm so glad you brought that up about your third grade teacher, Mrs. Richardson.
Thank you.
My dad's mother was a teacher, and she was one of those very strict teachers. She always told me to remain steadfast. She had the most beautiful cursive I've ever seen in my life. Anytime I see a card from my grandma Richards, my dad's mom, my eyes just light up. Her handwriting was so beautiful. But my dad said she was a very tough educator. She taught for 40 years, and she taught thousands of children. And my dad would always say, Mother always knew their names. He said whenever I was out with her in Lethbridge, he said even when she was in her 70s, there'd be kids coming up to us that were 50 years old saying, hello, Mrs. Richards, I'm David from third grade in blah, 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 Lethbridge School. Oh, David, you were a very good blah, blah. My dad said he was just like, what the hell?
That's
And
great.
she was tough. Like, she wasn't a super likable person.
4 of my best girlfriends are teachers, of the 5 of us in the group.
Wow.
Like, I'm the odd one out. And actually, sorry, there's 2 of us that are not teachers. Anyway, so there's a lot of teacher talk in our like best friends group chat. And even watching what these women have been through just to even become teachers, like backdoor ways into like getting on the supply list, and like just they're fighting to teach.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's I think about all of the kids who don't have a good support system at home too, where school is the support system, and you make the kids stay at home this week on Friday because of this strike, and who knows what situation those kids are
I
in.
know. It's just, we're thinking about all the educators, the custodians, the assistants,
Everyone.
the volunteers. We're thinking about all of you, and please, I apologize if I haven't got the language right. We don't want to say teachers at this blanket statement, and I know it's not about that. It's about all of the people in the classrooms, and it's probably semantics, but you know who you are. We know who you are, and just be kind, be grateful. I mean, they're on the front line of sending young people out into the world to do great things. But anyway, that's our podcast this week. We want to thank you for listening. Hit that subscribe button. It'll make it easier for us to pop up. iHeartRadio, you can listen to us there.
We need to tease our next guest before we leave too.
Oh my gosh, Sarah, you go. Who is it?
Our next guest next week is the one, the only, Tessa Virtue.
And we're going to try and get some information out of her. We can't say yet, but there's things going on in her mind. She is obviously a fantastic athlete, made us so proud at the Olympics, continues to be a mogul. She is like killing it out there, doing so many brand partnerships. And she's a lovely, talented, amazing person who is, man, she is lighting the world on fire. So she'll be with us next week. Don't go too far away from, your device, because you don't want to miss that. Adam Karsh, Sarah Burke, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week. Toodly-doo.